And on the Twitter right there, everyone. Not only on Twitter, Mike, but also on Energy. Yeah, but give me a minute, buddy. Also on Energy Facts Chat's YouTube channel, which you can head over there and watch this episode and the last 25 Energy Facts Chats we've done. You know what's funny? I was actually going through our old videos, our old conversations, and I'm like, is this going to be old? Everything we've talked about is still kind of relevant today. That's what I'm loving about this. It's like everything we're talking about is still relevant and pertinent today, and it's not a question of like, oh, well, that story's old. It's that the stories have evolved, and I love that about that. And obviously, if you're checking this out on LinkedIn, hello from LinkedIn. It's what time is it here? 4 o'clock here. It's 6 o'clock Central. It's 5 o'clock everywhere. So hey, we're having this beautiful afternoon here in beautiful San Diego. We're filming another live edition of Energy Facts Chats, and we're just kind of doing improv too. It's a beautiful afternoon. Yeah. We got a lot to talk about. What are we talking about? Let's do the headlines.
I bet Kenny Lay just posted like a roll call too. I bet it's
that. Oh, there's a roll call.
This is very significant right
here. If he's gonna shout out from us, that's the worlds collide. That's what I love. So all right, I'm gonna put this down. But if you're tuning in from anywhere or you want to say hello, and I'll bet the first one, yes. Monica says hi from the bedroom, which is right there outside the studio. Thanks. She's watching this, tuning in from our office for the week, I guess, is what we're doing. But if you notice too, we got a great little different setup. We have also the MTV style setup right there. Probably have to mess that around, but it's all right. You get what we get.
Production on the fly.
I love it. That's how we roll.
So you want to jump to some headlines?
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
And cheers everyone out there. Thanks for tuning in. And
Energy 24/7, even on a Friday afternoon.
Energy's always 24/7. This is fresh. It's nice. It's refreshing. And it took energy to get here and to come in my body. So I dig that. So Mike, I'm gonna put this here.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess what we're gonna talk about today is as we do all the time. It's kind of an impromptu toward the headlines, if you will. And we started off this morning, walked outside. It was a beautiful foggy day along the coast. Natural gas was kicking in, keeping electricity up and running, and then it kind of burnt off around 9 o'clock. And that's kind of when the solar things started getting kicked on, I saw.
And I immediately hit you with the first headline, which is the heat wave we're experiencing right now. A high of 82 degrees.
High of 82. Humidity is like 50%.
Friends from Houston.
Yeah,
scorcher,
and it's beautiful out. It's beautiful. I mean, to my wife and I, this is kind of a Christmas in Houston.
Yeah,
but we're digging it, man. We got to see some. Went to the zoo today. Went to the San Diego Zoo, which was first off, it's a beautiful zoo. If you've ever been there, and we made a kind of an interesting observation there.
What did you think about that? I pointed that out to you. Did you notice that?
So I did notice that. So the observation is, so we're walking up, we're taking the corner, and it's such a beautiful, huge zoo. And we're kind of walking in, we take the corner, and I was like, there's a double-decker bus inside the zoo. It's like that. Mike kind of looks over and goes, not only is it double-decker bus, it's also diesel.
Can't even get the electric bus going to limit the particulate matter on all these beautiful exotic animals and the children and the strollers breathing in that particulate the wildlife matter.
Yeah, it was nice. And the fact there was no electric bus to bring people around was very interesting to me. It was a very interesting observation.
And you made the point, Californians for Energy and Science, one of our first missions, our first milestone, we will know we have made it when we donate the first electric buses to the San Diego Zoo and get them out of this diesel disaster.
The diesel addiction, the diesel hypocrisy. I'll tell you what, though. You heard it here first. That should be a mission for the California Energy Science. To, like, if you are giving back to the community, donate an electric bus to the San Diego Zoo and kind of leave the impact there. I dig that.
Clean air for the animals, clein air for the children.
Yeah, and also, I mean, think how many eyes would be on that.
Right.
All the tourists that go in there, all the visitors, all the locals. 100% that'd be good. That'd be good feedback.
Yeah.
So whoa. Okay. Well, I've seen a lot in the headlines. Actually, I guess I have in the past couple of days. I've seen a lot of discussion when it comes to, and this kind of is good to say, we're the first article that he's gonna be sharing with us, I think I might take this camera out, the top camera, the MTV camera.
Too creepy?
It's a little too creepy. It's done.
Okay.
It's done. You
Sure.
get out of here, buddy. Disconnect. Yes.
Well,
Now-
while you're doing that, so I wore my
already
Padre hat, and this kind of sets up everything. The Padres have their highest payroll this year, right? And with that comes expectations on the field.
Yes.
Deliver, right?
Okay.
You're spending all this money.
I know what
You're
doing.
spending all this
Wow.
money. We want to see a product that delivers on the field, and we've got World Series playoff championship aspirations, right?
So there's expectations out
There's
there.
expectations when you invest that much money into a product. You want it to work how it should,
Especially
right?
if it's if it's the money of this entire community being put in this. Yeah, you want to work. You
well,
want
it's
to see
not our
results.
money, it's the owner's money, but we can pretend it's our money.
You want to see the results.
And so, long story short, for all the baseball fans out there, they can tell us the Padres are not even going to make the playoffs. And it's an interesting analogy to what I read here in the Wall Street Journal today. Just 2 days after AB 1373 was signed, and I'll get into that in California. But the headline is U.S. wind farm revolution is broken. What comes to mind? I mean, this is kind of, I didn't know that something that was just getting started could already break. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, I mean,
as an East Coaster.
Well, as an East Coaster, I mean, it's fun. I've been following the discussions a little bit about the whales washing on shore. Obviously, when it comes to the headlines like that, like you take everything with a grain of salt. Right. You know, I mean, there's some truth in it, but I'm sure there's some skewing it. You know, whether it's messing up the whales' migration or however they land up, whatever that is. So it's very interesting that after all this focus and all this money and trillions of dollars and studies and all that, and it's kind of like, again, I use the example of jumping into a pool without, testing first off to number one, to see the temperature of the water.
What if it's boiling?
But number two, to see if there's any water in the pool. So for all this investment, all this, whether it's the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and all this stuff, the movement. I mean, to hear about, first off, that's kind of the segue. Great, by the way, correlation. But I've heard over the past, couple of weeks, about, the wind being dead
in Texas. Yeah,
things not coming back.
ERCOT. Well, yeah, ERCOT, you're getting the notices.
We just got another notice that, again, I think this is the 8th or 9th one that we've got in the past, 2 weeks about. There's a crunch and there's an increased surge in demand. There's not only that, there's also low wind, low solar. Energy consumption. It does listen, which is good because it is bringing to discussion. But to have so much, I guess, motivation and momentum behind something, and to hear this, to see that again, this is one of those things. I would hope again. Maybe people, again, there's a hope from this. Maybe people would pause just a little bit and say, let's come to the table and have an energy discussion that makes sense for everyone, not just certain people, and also that's based off of science. It's based 100%. Off of yes.
And there are so many tidbits.
Turn it around so people can see that.
In this one article about offshore wind, today's Wall Street Journal, September 8th, 2023. But we've got Ørsted that's kind of signaling this alarm, which is a former oil and gas producer. They call themselves former oil and gas producer, become wind developer. It's cost them more than $10 billion in stock value, in market capitalization. This announcement that, hey, we can't build these offshore wind farms at the price point we need. We need more federal subsidies. We need more support. There's questions in here about procuring the equipment that's being installed and does it meet the qualifications of the IRA.
So if I'm sitting back here, I'm saying, okay, well, big oil gets subsidies and all that stuff. Why? That's the fault of big oil. Then why don't we just put more subsidies in that, pour more money in that? What is that? Would that be a solution, or why would that not work?
That's one angle, and the other angle is if you've got an oil and gas developer, are they the right company? Do they have the right subject matter expertise to then say, hey, you know what? Oil and gas is no longer in vogue. I'm going to be an offshore wind developer because I operate offshore platforms, I guess, because I know how to put these stanchions in the ocean floor. And this is a picture on the East Coast, and the Biden administration wants 30 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity by 2030. 30
Do you know-
gigawatts.
Do you know where
30.
we're at today? I mean, break this out, kind of pull back to kind of get away from
You
the
better
science.
get your electricity maps out pretty quick for ERCOT. I don't know how much installed capacity is on ERCOT's grid. I know Texas has the most installed wind capacity. I want to say it's around 20 gigawatts onshore. Don't hold me to that. I
Okay.
know that onshore California is between 6 and 7 gigawatts. So, and California onshore was some of the first world-class wind assets developed back in the 70s and 80s. They came into the passes that kind of the corridors
Yep.
between San Diego and the desert, Tehachapi up in Bakersfield, Kern County in the desert, up north, Alta Mesa. So there's several world-class onshore wind developments in California.
That produced about 6 or 7. You said.
6 or 7. And the problem is it's the wind that we got is developed. You know, the onshore wind is fully developed.
Yeah, it's
You're
not
not
like-
going to
yeah.
have further expansion.
Yeah.
They've already put the
You're not going to go
infrastructure where
and
it
find
can
more wind.
capture the wind it
Yeah.
needs to be right. But that's what the offshore wind push is about.
Okay.
We need to move offshore because it's very windy in offshore Martha's Vineyard, offshore East Coast, or offshore California.
Now, let me ask you a question. Is this an actual solution? Or is this just one of those things you're just kind of punting the ball a couple years until maybe some more headlines come out like this, or should there be some more studies in this? I mean, what do you feel that this is kind of like pushing it kind of the inevitable down, or is this kind of like that is a solution to generate the 30 gigawatts of energy that the administration is requesting?
Let me answer it this way. It says in here, according to Lazard, building a U.S. offshore wind farm can cost $4,000 per kilowatt at the midpoint of estimates, compared with $1,360 for onshore wind. So it's at least
it's 4 times more.
3.5 times
Okay.
more expensive, and 4 times more expensive than solar. So it's a very expensive technology. And another wrinkle in this is U.S. wind farm revolution is broken. This is based off East Coast wind farms. So the Atlantic shelf, the shelf off Martha's Vineyard and Rhode Island,
Right.
and these East Coast resources is shallow. So they can stick those stanchions right into the ocean floor. And that's what folks are studying on,
The
is that
whale, yeah.
percussive, banging, making the whales,
Right,
sonar all skewed, and are they washing on
And
shore?
so what's the
because of that?
difference between the platforms out here versus the platform?
So California is calling for 25 gigawatts. So Biden wants 30 gigawatts of offshore wind. California wants 25 gigawatts offshore Northern California, Humboldt County. It's very deep. So the difference in the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic on these shelves is it gets deep very quickly. So you have to have floating offshore wind turbines out in the Pacific Ocean, which is even more expensive than what we're hearing in the Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
today on the East Coast. It's even more expensive. And by the way, the technology is not there yet to make it happen. So I think to answer your question that you asked, it gets back to our policymakers setting goals and frameworks out there because they sound good and could be possible.
Yeah.
And how concerning is that as a taxpayer, where your tax money is going to these infrastructure bills to fund these projects? Well, don't you want to know that your tax money is
It's
being
going to
spent on
work. It's going
something
to help the
that's going
community.
to work?
It's going to help
Something
the community.
that's going to go to the playoffs,
Yeah.
or the World Series and keep the lights on? Or am I pumping all my money into something that
Crypto energy.
is broken?
Yeah.
On the Wall Street Journal is broken. This is not
And
left or right wing media. This is the Wall Street Journal.
but it seems like the push or the lean into wind by a lot of people, whether it's whether it's the population, whether it's the news, whether that, it seemed like wind seemed to take like a real like great footing on like whatever can like fill that gap of the energy that we need to move away from hydrocarbons, to move away from fossil fuels.
right.
And now you're seeing this less than 2.5 years after like that huge push.
Right.
I know it's been going on for a while, but I'm just saying, yeah.
And to your point on ERCOT, it's a very fragile resource. It can be gone, and then there's no making
Back
that
up.
infrastructure work. If it's a still day, You're not getting your wind, and it's this expensive to put out on the grid. So I just think I don't know that the general public really puts all this together. They might hear, oh, well, wind's going to save us. Duh.
Yeah, we'll just put more. We'll just put more. We'll just put more up. We'll put more up. Yeah,
just get more up.
But we're already maxed out.
Well, we're pushing the limits, and we're trying to push those limits further out into the unknown, and that's okay. I'm not saying we shouldn't be pushing the limits of where we can go and really moving forward, but at what cost? And are we going about this in a measured, sustainable way? Pragmatic. I think we lose sight of the word sustainable.
Yeah.
Well,
it's just like jobs. I mean, I read something also, another headline. I read something about jobs being there's so many different jobs being created, and that are behind this, the new green energy projects and all this stuff. However, once it stops, do the jobs continue? I mean, how many people do you need watching a solar field? How many people do you need doing this? How many people do maintaining a wind turbine? So it is maybe creating jobs in the spot market.
Right.
However, is that sustainable? Is that long-term employment?
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of services going on. I'm sure there's jobs.
I'm not saying there's not jobs. I'm just saying is it sustainable. But also what's interesting too is like I was at this Labor Day party, barbecue, whatever. I was talking to this cat, and this is also interesting. Everyone you talk to in the energy space, whether it's, again, I think I talked about this yesterday, whether you're on the hydrocarbon side, whether you're on the renewable side, the battery, whatever side you're on, there's an understanding of energy.
Right.
And there's understanding what works, what doesn't work, what complements each other, what doesn't complement each other, and the realities of energy, and it seems like we all get it, there's no this versus that camp. It's all, we understand energy. And even on all sides of the table, there's an understanding that we need it all, to have the belief that you can actually move away completely. But I was talking to this guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm actually on these renewable projects, kind of Central Texas and all that stuff. And he's like, man, I'll tell you one thing, like this doesn't have an ROI. Like, this is not doing this. Like, but I mean, it's kind of, if you fall, it's free money, like we're getting paid and all this stuff. It's, I think there's something that you have to support, like it's kind of like similar to a union or something like that. But anyway, he was voicing, he's like, we're doing this, because it's there, but there's no return on this. It's not a good, and he's saying this in that space. And it's just like,
does it sound something like offshore wind farms should be one of the best solutions to the climate crisis, but are turning out to be a lousy business?
Yeah.
Opening line.
Yeah.
And that should concern people. And it's not a knock on the attempt to make that
not at all
happen.
Not at all.
It's simply, should you be trusting oil and gas companies or companies outside of a particular skill set? Should we expect them to be able to make this happen at all?
Yeah.
They've never done it before. They're trying to do something new. So can they make it happen? Is it profitable? Beyond that, can people afford it? As you're getting announcements to shed load when it's in high demand, or when I'm getting text messages in California to shed load because we're about to have a blackout. And then, oh, by the way, your utility prices are continuing to go up with no end in sight.
That's what I'm worried about too, is like at the end of the summer, like at every end of the month, like I'm always like, what's it going to be this month? Like, I know it's not whatever, but it's like, it's getting higher and higher. Yeah, it is.
And tying back to some of the questions we got yesterday about, well, what's the solution? How do we solve this? How do we spread awareness? I think that's one of the areas that is an opportunity zone for people that are just energy geeks and like to talk about it on a Friday afternoon, because we got nothing better to do in sunny San Diego.
Let me explain something. I know this. My wife. If I'm going to San Diego, I'm talking energy.
Right.
All right. That's what everyone knows about me.
Exactly. But talking to neighbors, and I think that's the opportunity, is to just ask your neighbors, hey, how do we start talking about this? How do we present our, we've got these big, massive, multi-billion-dollar corporations that get to dictate how these projects are built. Where's the independent? Where's the little guy? How do we collectively have a voice as a community to say, yeah, we're down with clean. We're down with clean power, whether it's wind or geothermal, which I want to touch on with this AB 1373. But I think those are the opportunities, is just continuing to focus on connecting within our community to say, yeah, this isn't working for us. We're all struggling to pay these utility rates, or we're all struggling to, react to a text message every time I got to turn off the laundry.
I mean, it seems like the days of abundant affordable energy is like it's just keeps kind of getting further and further behind us. That's just what it feels like right now. I mean, we're obviously waiting for the energy boomerang to come around when people actually do start asking questions about why is this my bill so high? Why is gas in San Diego so high versus, you know, when I went over to Arizona, it's not as much. Like why now's the time for people to ask questions. And unfortunately, it's important right now.
Right.
And we are we are in an election year. And I actually saw it's like we have another, 14 months before the election. It's like, damn it, I hate election years, number one.
Right.
But this is the time for people to kind of pause and not get caught up in the noise, not get so drawn into the rhetoric, the articles that mislead. This is the time to start having the barbershop talks, to start going across, talking to your neighbors, start diving into your community versus more than this rhetoric, because it is election time. That's an emotions drive stuff, not logic, not science. Because California energy should be based on science.
I love it. And I'm pulling up a tweet I put because you mentioned gas prices, and I know I'm not going to spoil any kind of announcement, but I know you're working on something special for an event on the policy front. But you're right, it's an election season, and we should be talking about this. But you've got in today's San Diego Union Tribune an article about the law that was passed in California to keep tabs on the oil industry.
Yeah, what is that all about?
So we've got a special commission within the California Energy Commission and a new czar of identifying price gouging. And some of these quotes, we will ask a simple question. Ty Milder is the director of the newly created division of Petroleum Market Oversight. California and its Energy Commission now has a division of Petroleum Market Oversight. That sounds pretty big. That sounds kind of like OPEC, right? That sounds like a big ruling agency.
Well, that is big ruling, but for a state, or let's say California as a country with a declining production with only 7 permits being approved, that seems like a pretty a bold
statement.
A big statement for something that seems not really active, not really needed.
They will ask a simple question: are consumers getting ripped off? If the answer is yes, then we will act.
So it has no reason who's ripping who off.
Saudi's ripping me off. They cut production 1.3 million barrels a day, right?
Right.
The oil and gas industry in California is not allowed to produce. We can't have permits, so it's not our fault, right?
Yeah.
How can we rip you off if we can't bring on more supply? If I'm an oil operator,
we know
which I'm not. I tried to be, but I was told I'm not allowed to be by the state of California.
Yeah.
And I think that begs a question of, okay, so at what point when we talk about San Diego prices at $5.43 a gallon?
Okay, I've seen $5.99 around here.
Yeah. I don't know where $5.43 might be Costco on average, because they sell the most gas from foreign countries.
I haven't seen $5.43, by the way. That's slow.
So we've got $1.44 a gallon in taxes referenced in here. So my question is, $1.44 a gallon in taxes, shouldn't that be compared apples to apples against the spread refineries are making? And what happens if that spread is on par? What happens if the state is making just as much as the oil operators or the refineries? Really, it's not even the oil operators in the state making money anymore because they can't get permits and the wells are declining. So it's really fascinating to me. All of the, we're betting on wind. Is it going to happen? We're saying we're getting price gouge. Well, when the math pencils out, is the state making more than the oil refinery? And then who's gouging who?
But what's kind of it's cautious about that too is, like, you're right, there's a czar. It seems like a no questions and no discord environment. And for such an important part of everybody's lives, you, me, your neighbor, your family, everyone's lives, it seems counterintuitive or counterproductive to have someone that just asks one question and that's the answer that sets the stage. I mean,
are you getting ripped off?
Yeah, I mean, there should be. I mean, I'm getting ripped off every day by the government. You know what I mean? But here's the deal. But it's to have that statement for such a already a suffocated industry here. When you went from 1,400 permits down to 7.
Right.
You went from producing this much to phasing out production. You went to it's so everything's kind of getting squeezed, and then to set up a czar to have that dialogue, and at the end of the day, that just shows me that's going to be like, that's that 1984 style. That's that think tank that they're going to tell you on why things are this, why gas is this, why prices are so high. They're going to tell you why versus you asking or having that dialogue on why is it like this.
And this petroleum marketing oversight division is funded by the ratepayer. It's a $6 million a year commission for the salaries of these bureaucrats, and it's coming out of everybody's utility bill on their electricity rates. So even if you in California
So that's just another
own only electric vehicles and you do not buy gasoline anymore, you're paying for this. You're paying for the oversight of OPEC and for the threat that we will claw back OPEC's profits from the people of California. Really?
Yeah.
Because that's the only people that are going to get affected by this kind of a commission. Saudi Arabia is not paying for this. They're saying, I'm bringing a boat. I'm pumping.
You're going to get it anyway.
I'm pumping bunker fuel across the world. I'm pumping diesel particulate across the world to bring you this oil and gas because your caloric intake, your energy requirements as a state
are
still high. They're still 500 to 600 million barrels a year. And somehow a commission in this state is going to penalize OPEC, or they're going to penalize operators that are not able to permit their own oil field operations any longer in this state
without discussion.
How it's just I don't understand. I don't get it. I need more than are people getting ripped off, we will act. I need more thoughtfulness. I need more mindfulness about the situation.
You want more of a strategy. Yeah, you want more strategy, you want more details. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that doesn't sound so. It's very subjective.
It's very subjective.
It's very subjective. Who are you getting ripped off? Well, I mean, I have that answer. Whoever my enemy is today, I'm going to use that as the finger pointing. The finger point. That's
Absolutely.
pretty. That's pretty cool.
Powerful.
So again,
Powerful.
it's another price to the utility bill here. Another point to the utility bill.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it leads to the third headline that I wanted to talk about, which probably didn't make mainstream news, but it's AB 1373.
What is this? You talked about this. What is this AB?
So this bill in California now empowers the state to procure clean energy resources, offshore wind and geothermal.
Okay.
So now the state is going to act as the buyer or investor in said projects.
Okay.
Which, again, in the backdrop of the wind revolution is broken, the oil and gas market is broken, all of these markets are broken, the government is going to come in and save it. That's it's concerning. I mean, I don't know if anybody else
walk me through this a little bit more. Walk me, because I'm understanding, but
so
clarify.
We have climate action goals in California.
Okay.
That we want to be zero emission power production by 2045.
Okay.
And you've got 46% of the grid still fired by natural gas. So how, at a fundamental level, how can we displace and replace 46% natural gas on the grid while also expanding the grid to accommodate electrify everything? And the only way, the answer, the AB 1373, the answer to me is the state is saying, in order to finance projects and get projects moving that are, quote, turning out to be a lousy business, the state's going to have to de-risk that, right? From a capital investment perspective.
Yep.
If a bank knows something is a lousy business, they're not going to lend money to a developer to develop a wind farm, to develop a geothermal resource, to develop an oil and gas resource if it's out of favor and subject to taxes. So it all goes back to this model of, if we're trying to push to 100% zero emissions, and we've talked about this a lot, the last remaining molecules of carbon are going to be the most expensive to rid themselves of the system. As you go up that cost curve, it's easy to replace the first half of the carbon emitters. It gets increasingly more difficult because you're dealing with darkness. So solar goes away. You're dealing with low wind. You're dealing with seasonal duration issues. You're dealing with all these issues,
and you're dealing with a gap in technology as well. Let's be clear. Let's be clear about that. That is a huge thing that I think I want to put a pin in, there's a huge gap in technology. It's not the question that, oh, only if we could, only if the big oil will get out and the money will be back in the technology. There's a gap. We don't have the technology in 2023 today to do what they're saying is possible. That's the thing.
So solutions. What would be let's set a couple of rules.
Okay.
Like, okay, let's align with the state. Let's sing Kumbaya. I want to go 100% green. I'm fully a geothermal developer now, so I'm putting my money behind it, literally, in my project. We're developing geothermal energy storage, right? So I'm in. But the reason I call out these news articles and the bills being passed is we need to show the state that's controlling these levers that we have reasonable suggestions. Hey, listen to us. Why would they listen to us if we're not bringing, meeting them
new
in the
ideas?
Say, hey, yeah, let's bring it. So what do you have a rule that you would what would help this all out? And kind of the theme of like government's going to fix everything, but we're not ready yet. What would be? You want me to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge swing.
That's
a great question.
One thing I would say to policymakers in Sacramento or Washington D.C., I would say, hey, where are the economics? Show me the economics. Show me the economics after the IRA. The IRA is not going to last forever. So I would say, talk to me about what do we need to start planning for in 20. I think the IRA, the tax credits, from my understanding, as long as you break ground by 2032, which is pretty close, really. That's 9 years away. You can qualify for the tax incentives and the tax credits. So my question, my thought would be, okay, agree with you. IRA, we need it. We need to fund these new energy developments. My feedback to policymakers would be, number one, what is 2032 to 2045? What are those 13 years? How do we bridge those 13 years? Show me that the economies of scale are going to happen, the efficiencies are going to happen, that now offshore wind in California is not going to be $8,000 per
but
kilowatt.
I still feel like you're kind of forcing like a square in a circle, because like here's the deal, this 2045, this 2050, to me, that's a mirage. That's a mirage in the distance that's going to keep pushed back. Is it factual though?
Push it back.
But is it even real? But is it just marketing? Is it this net zero 2050? Is that just marketing? Is that a real tangible
thing? So what lever
thing?
could we suggest to test that? Is it just marketing? Do they have to be economic at a certain price point? Show me how you can make the ratepayer fit this into their budget. What does that look like?
Man, I don't know, because here's the deal. I feel like we're stuck on this, and that's a great question. Like I think there's smarter people out there.
No, you're brilliant.
No, but here's the deal.
You're having dinners with people in industry. How would the oil and gas space look?
But
how would your friends look?
But here's the deal. Also, it's like you're asking about, like, for me, it's let's pause real quick, okay? I feel like we're constantly, as whether it's an industry, whether it's a society, whatever, we're constantly trying to fix a future.
Right.
A future that, man, let's just try to get through today. Like, let's not worry we're going on our 10-year anniversary, honey.
Right.
Let's get through the first year of marriage.
Right.
I kind of feel like these conversations are great to have, in a philosophical, a fireside chat, whatever. But the real answer is, how are we fixing the stuff that's happening today that's affecting my bills today in the next year? Right. Let's handle that stuff first before we start having these high-fluting conversations. Look, I understand we got to plan for tomorrow, but call me more of a, I'm looking at my bank, I'm looking at, what I can spend a month in my bank account right now today versus what I'm looking at in 2050.
Right.
Like, I'd rather have the conversations, how we're going to handle it today without all, yeah, you're right. So let's take economics into it, economics into it. Let's take a science into it. The realistic, like, how many days were cloudy? How many days were this? How many, I don't know. I mean, it's a big question. I think that probably needs more direct conversation that's based on science, that's based on factual energy, what is the energy molecule and how dense it is. I think the conversation needs to be probably focused around how we handle it today in the next, 2-3 years versus, hey, 2050. Dude, I don't even, like, that's like what do you want to be in 5 years? I don't know. Like,
Right.
I'm just trying to survive the week, man. Like, seriously, like, I would say start having more realistic conversation today. How it's affected today versus this 2050 goal that you and I both know that's going to probably change. It's going to be 2070, 2090, 2100. I don't know.
So I got another then on today. So let's look at West Texas and flaring and natural gas. What if folks that operated those assets said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to capture this gas and we're going to make clean electricity out of it, which it is clean.
Yep.
It's cleaner than coal. It's cleaner than burning fuel oil on the East Coast when you're trying to heat your home in the middle of December. It's cleaner than a lot of sources of energy that we're still consuming.
Right.
So it's a stepping stone. So why don't we hear more of the industry pushing, hey, we need some pipeline infrastructure. We need more pipeline infrastructure. In California, we use gas storage to bridge the winter months. We fill it up in the spring when it's cheap, and we use it in the winter. So maybe hey, for every permit that you're giving to a wind developer, where's the permit to fortify, to harden the stuff that works now?
Yeah.
Why don't we hear that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think about that a lot because I feel like it can be in vogue for people to just be like, oh, well, we'll just switch.
You're forfeiting practices that work, practices that supply energy for a potential hope of something that may work, that might work, that should work. You look at any newspaper, this, technology should be able to save this, the energy crisis, should be able to fix climate crisis, whatever, should, could, would.
Right.
That's what you all hear. You're right. So why? That's a good point.
And if we're doing it the right way, shouldn't the grid continue to be hardened?
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be better and better and better every year?
Yeah.
We should not be seeing these headlines of, oh man, or the announcements that you're getting. Hey, JP, turn down your air conditioning. We need to shed load. There's no wind. There's no solar. It's still hot outside in Texas.
And again, taking that back to the family, like we're lucky. We have our daughter half the time with this, that. There's families out there that like they have to do laundry at 5:30 at night during that window when you should be there. They have to get stuff done that requires energy, that requires electricity.
Yep.
From the time they get home, when their kids get home from school, where it's 5 to 7, 5 to 9, and that's when they're asking people. So that means parents either, number one, they have to just roll the dice and do it. Number two, or just kind of stay up later and just take. It's unfortunate. I think the problem to protect the future. Don't get me wrong, man. Like, I think where we're at is like we're just improving. I really believe that. You wouldn't see that in a lot of newspaper. I really think we're improving. And I think looking at the future a little more optimistic and a little more holistic, as you say, versus doom and gloom, the sky is falling, probably be a pretty good start. I think it's extremely important. And going, this might be another tangent too, but we talked about, I think those last OPEC cut, Biden again doubled down on these green projects and all that stuff. And again,
didn't you say today he has to,
and then again today? Well, that was a couple months back. I kind of did one of those short minute-long energy updates about that. And again, you see the same behavior. You see the voluntary OPEC cuts up to the end of the year. You see oil floating around $90 a barrel right now, currently today. And
Pickering said something about 100, a compelling case for 100.
For 100.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun
And then
times.
And then you see, Biden frees U.S. Arctic oil, and then they're
because why? Who did he consult?
So on the board, they actually canceled 7 leases to protect the environment. And again, someone made a case in here. It's like you can have developing locations, developing well sites, and still protect the environment. They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
And that meant that mindset that like, oh, you have this, like it ruins the environment. That's just not true. There's enough environmental protection around oil and gas operating sites leases that we all know, whether it's a lizard, whether it's an owl, whatever it is. So on one of the legal justifications was knowledge from a shaman. It was a spiritual dogma, religious dogma that was one of the decisions for them to kind of shut it down.
Shaman is
a shaman,
spiritual leader.
Yeah. It says U.S. gasoline prices have risen 60 cents a gallon this year. Saudi Arabia and Russia command the oil market. The administration flogs, green energy subsidies, but how many more climate policies destroying? Yeah. Employment in oil and gas extraction is 15% lower than before the pandemic. So
this industry is being and Saudi and Russia. And I think that's
but also talks about this in the Arctic Oil. It says, we're doing this to protect the environment, but it also says that Russia, just as you pointed out yesterday, was doing nothing with the sort. They're drilling, they're training, they're nudging the caribous aside, they're blowing and going. They don't have the environmental regulations we do. So might as well hand it off to our.
Nor does anybody rule the Arctic.
Yeah.
You've got China, Russia, U.S. kind of all up there vying for this position, and our administration saying we're not going to touch it.
Let's protect it.
What's in our borders, we're going to protect, and then everything around. So 3/4 of that circle is just going to be whatever goes.
Yeah, it's gonna be the Wild West. It's gonna be Wild West, just like in a James Bond movie. All right, let's take it to the streets right now. We got
there someone in the streets right now?
We got Daryl in the streets. Daryl Polson in the house. Daryl's in the house. Love out Daryl. Daryl is the most covered up cat in energy out there. I mean, we're not even connected. We follow each other. He's so connected. Warren Buffett says the only reason to invest in wind was tax credits. He also says, what are the pinch point subjects, especially in electrical distribution? Now ask about what is the needed infrastructure to firm the grid. This is going to your thing. What discussion points? What rules do we have?
Good questions. Daryl.
What will be the needed changes to end user habits and the need for demand side response and energy efficiency and demand destruction to meet the goals? Now, what would be the cost to consumer?
Daryl is not in Bakersfield, is he? Because there's Daryl's storage all over the Central Valley. He's not the kingpin of storage, Daryl.
So he says they are doing it, but not at a scale yet, and is a step to use it for electricity and some button mining versus flare by. So he's talking about the flaring.
Okay, they're pushing the flaring.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. I just saw another thing that the methane issue is going to be what I think I got this on.
Front and center.
It was like it's going to be the methane is a serious issue right now that it's going to be very heavily
according
regulated.
to NASA, methane has 80 times the warming intensity than CO2 molecules. So if that's true, I would believe it's true. Then absolutely. Why? And I made this point on Twitter the other day. Why is Oxy able to participate in any carbon sequestration project, price per carbon, anything of that nature if they flare gas? That would be one thing I would say day one to federal or state administrations. If you've got an oil and gas operator that's flaring gas, they should not be able to participate in any sort of tax credit or ESG scheme until they stop flaring gas. That should be one. And why Buffett, there's no way to make wind or make money on wind without the subsidies. Buffett's riding Oxy subsidies all day long. Talk about a two-faced, what's Biden's phrase? Talk about a lion, two-faced dog, pony whisperer, or whatever the hell. When you see that lame phrase Biden says, oh, Warren Buffett cares about the environment or cares about what's baloney. Warren Buffett makes so much money. All of it. And that goes to the point that we talk about the wealthy and the big businesses making it on this. He trucks all the crude out of the Bakken. He doesn't want pipelines. He doesn't want what's best for the environment. He wants rail.
He wants on a rail because he owns a rail.
He wants to rail that crude out of there. Oh, but at the same time, he wants to back Oxy, and he wants direct air capture of a molecule that's 0.0004% of the atmosphere, and he's going to get paid to do it in carbon sequestration while his darling Oxy flares in perpetuity. I mean, Warren Buffett is the master of looking like this friendly old grandpa. And he's evil Dr. Burns sitting in the background doing whatever he wants and getting rich along the way.
Well, what politician's not like that? Even if he's not a politician.
I don't talk about politicians because they're setting up these regulatory czars and these oversight for my benefit. So I'm going to trust the government to look out for me. But I'm going to call out Warren Buffett.
Okay, Warren Buffett. I know he's a listener. I know he's an Energy Facts listener.
Sitting there in Omaha eating a Big Mac, listening to
driving his Accord.
Yep.
So Well, all right. So what else we got on the
Was that our lone comment
agenda?
listener, Daryl?
Yeah, Daryl's in the house.
You got
Daryl's
another
tuning
Daryl?
in. Let's see what's else. I think that's kind of
I think we wrap it up and start grilling.
I dig that. Well, everyone out there, it's been a beautiful day in San Diego, and often times like this, it kind of gives you time to stop, pause, and kind of reflect, and just realize that things could always be more hectic, things could be more turmoil, but at the end of the day, things could always be worse. So enjoy what you got, enjoy the people that you're with, and try not to get lost too much of the noise and the rhetoric and the narratives of the hustle and bustle, and try to kind of lift yourself above that and have productive, constructive, and just great conversations with people, whether it's about energy, whether it's about electricity bill, and what we can do about that. So that's the whole point of Energy Facts Chats. We're trying to bridge. Give me that. Give me that. Give me the paper. We're trying to bridge energy expectations with energy realities. And that being said, we are energy maximalists. We love all forms of energy. However, when it affects the consumer, when it affects the environment, and they said it's not going to either one, that's when we step in and we discuss it. So, again, energy maximalists, bridging the gap between energy expectations and energy realities. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in. You enjoyed this. Share it, like, subscribe. You're already watching this. Daryl, thanks for the comments, buddy. We appreciate it.
And turn your thermostat up to 85 this weekend, all weekend.
And 5 and 9, don't exist in the 21st century. So deal with it. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all soon. And thanks for tuning in. Oh, I didn't do the song.